Neymar is finished. Retire before you embarrass yourself. That, believe it or not, was the official verdict. 18 months ago, that is exactly where football had filed the man who, 10 years earlier, was supposed to inherit the entire sport from Messi, the heir to the throne. And there he was, with clips of him jogging, just jogging, going viral, thousands of replies all chanting the same funeral hymn. He is done. Let it go. Move on. And then, on the 18th of May, in Rio de Janeiro, the most ruthless manager in world football walked up to the podium. He looked at every bit of that noise, and he put Neymar on the plane anyway. The press room went silent for about half a second. Wait, what is going on? Did he really just say that name? Neymar called up. The name landed. It hung in the air, and then the questions came pouring out. And here is the part almost every Neymar video this year sprinted right past. Everyone was busy arguing about whether he would make the squad. Almost nobody stopped to ask who was actually making that decision. Because the man who wrote that name onto the list is the last human in football you would ever expect to do it. He had snubbed Neymar 3 separate times. Not once. 3 times. He owed Neymar absolutely nothing. Professionally, the man is allergic to sentiment, and yet he looked at Neymar and said yes, with conditions, on his own cold terms. Keep 3 things in mind over the next 15 minutes. The world wrote the obituary far too early. The one judge who actually mattered ran his own private investigation. And in a Brazil that had half given up on Neymar too, that judge reached an answer the rest of football flatly refused to give. So stick with this. To feel the real weight of that squad announcement, you have to be honest about something first. About how completely dead this story looked. Buried. Eulogy written. Flowers sent. Go back to October 2023. A World Cup qualifier. Brazil against Uruguay. Neymar simply turns, with barely any contact worth mentioning, and the knee just goes. Torn. Anterior cruciate ligament. Damaged meniscus. 31 years old, a full year on the sidelines. Then came the decision that nearly ended his international career for good. He stayed at Al Hilal, trying to rehab a shattered knee and justify one of the fattest contracts in the sport at the same time. 18 months at the club, 7 appearances total. The most expensive ghost football has ever seen. January 2025, Al Hilal cut him loose. He went home to Santos on a free transfer. The boyhood club. On paper, the perfect comeback story. In reality, a club scrapping against relegation and a body that simply would not cooperate. Hamstring, thigh, more muscle problems, one after another. There is a night in 2025 where Santos lose 6-0 to Vasco da Gama and Neymar walks off in tears. Then, late December 2025, another knee surgery. One ESPN Brazil journalist put it about as bluntly as a person can. The best Neymar no longer exists. And when whispers of a Brazil recall started to build, a man with no horse in this race spoke up. Christophe Dugarry, a World Cup winner with France back in 1998. He called the whole idea a freak show. He said he could sense a deep mockery in it. His point was sharp. Dragging Neymar out for one last tournament disrespected both the player and the shirt. And Dugarry has zero emotional skin in this. He is French. He won a World Cup against Brazil. So when even that guy calls it a circus, the pile of doubt stops feeling like noise and starts feeling like a verdict. And on the cold numbers, he had a case. By early 2026, Neymar had roughly 4 league goals at Santos, 4 in the Brazilian league. For a player whose entire identity was being the most gifted attacker of his generation, that number lands like an obituary printed in a slightly nicer font. So by the time the Brazil squad announcement rolled around, the honest position, the reasonable one, was painfully simple. Neymar's World Cup was over. He had not pulled on the national team shirt in 2.5 years. 3 different Brazil squads had come and gone without him. The math said no, the body said no, serious football people said no. Hold on to all of that, Because what comes next only hits if you remember how reasonable it was to give up on him. Then the one man who owed him nothing made the call. Now, anyone can say Neymar deserves a World Cup spot. His family can say it. Sponsors can say it. Fans who grew up worshipping him say it. And of course they do. People who love you are practically required to believe in you. That is not evidence. The real question runs the other direction entirely. Would the harshest, least sentimental judge in the entire sport look at the same evidence and land on the same answer? His name is Carlo Ancelotti, the most decorated club manager in football history. A Champions League winner more times than any coach alive. League titles in England, Italy, Spain, France, and Germany. And across 4 decades, the one accusation never once thrown at him is sentimentality. Cold calls, enormous names parked on the bench, decisions that hurt, made without so much as a flicker. On top of all of it, he is the first non-Brazilian, the first true outsider ever handed permanent charge of the Brazil national team. In a country where football lives somewhere between religion and mythology, Ancelotti showed up with no reverence for the institution and no emotional debt to the legends who came before him. The hire was seismic. What it meant for Neymar's situation, though, was actually very simple. The man now ruling on his case had 40 years of practice ignoring reputations and a spotless record of never, ever going soft. Here is the part the romantic version of this story conveniently skips. Ancelotti did not pick Neymar at the first chance. He picked him at the very last one. May 2025. His debut Brazil squad. Neymar left out. August 2025. The finals qualifiers. Neymar left out again. Then March 2026. The pre-tournament friendlies. The last meaningful window before the final squad. Neymar left out a third time. 3 squads. 3 rejections. And in March, Ancelotti did not bother with diplomatic language. He drew a line right in front of the cameras. His message was ice cold. Neymar could be at the World Cup only if he was 100% fit. He had not called him up, he said, precisely because he was not 100%. Neymar had to be training and playing. Full stop. Meet the standard or stay home. And then, somewhere between March and May, something changed. And it was not a highlight reel. Neymar came back from that December surgery in February. He scored twice against Vasco da Gama and answered his critics straight into the camera. But forget the goals for a second. Look at what he did with the calendar. In the 6 weeks leading into the squad announcement, he played 9 of Santos's last 12 matches. For most players, a totally unremarkable run of games. But for Neymar, 2.5 years after his body first started filing formal complaints, 9 of 12 was the only answer to the only question Ancelotti had ever actually asked, and Ancelotti's explanation of the pick was careful and deliberate. He said they had evaluated Neymar all year long and that he had recently been playing consistently and had improved his physical condition. 2 quiet words doing all the heavy lifting there. Consistency and fitness. He was describing not where the player had been, but where he was heading, and then came the line that mattered most of all. They chose Neymar, he explained, because they believed he could help the team, whether that meant 1 minute, 5 minutes, 90 minutes, or even stepping up to take a penalty. And after that, Neymar would play only if he earned it. That single sentence made it impossible to read the selection as anything other than a cold, calculated call. Before any of this ever went public, Ancelotti got Neymar and the Brazil sporting director on a video call and laid the terms of the return out flat. No captaincy, no guaranteed starting spot, new rules about conduct inside the Navarrese camp, right down to the volume on his social media. Asking the most recognizable face in Brazil to dial back his own profile is a manager guarding a dressing room. It is about protecting what the rest of that squad needs in order to do their jobs. 3 public rejections. A video call full of conditions. A press conference where Ancelotti all but apologized to the player he bumped to make room. That whole process matters. Dugarry had called this a freak show, but the harder you look at how this decision actually got made, the more deliberate it looks. A manager hiring a role player who just happens to own 79 international goals and making him sign off on the job description first. So, was Ancelotti right? Here is where it gets messy. Brazil could not even agree with itself. On the day of the announcement, Globo Esporte ran a poll, more than 130,000 votes. Should Neymar be in the squad? The result came back 50.79% against. The country that supposedly never stopped believing in him was split right down to the decimal. Half of Brazil wanted him left at home, but look at who was standing on the other side. Ronaldo, the original number 9 himself, had publicly told Ancelotti to take Neymar. His reasoning was simple. Brazil just do not have another player like him. Mbappe, who lined up beside him at Paris Saint-Germain, said he could not picture a World Cup without Neymar in it. He spoke about him with real warmth. He said Neymar is a wonderful player, that he makes a real difference. He has played with him. He has learned a ton from him. But more than anything, he knows Neymar. He will prepare for the World Cup. He will be there. He knows him, Mbappe insisted. He truly knows him. Now, the pick cost something very real. To squeeze Neymar in, Ancelotti left out João Pedro, the Chelsea striker coming off a strong Premier League season. Exactly the kind of informed number 9 who walks into almost any squad on earth. Ancelotti more or less apologized to him at the press conference, admitted the kid deserved a spot on form, and then chose Neymar anyway. That is the actual price tag. You do everything right for a whole season, every single box ticked, and you still lose your seat to a name. If you are João Pedro, that one stings for years, and Ancelotti knew it. So here is the honest case against him. 4 league goals in Brazil. A body that has needed surgery twice in 3 years. A 48-team World Cup stretched across a North American summer, with brutal travel and brutal heat, just about the worst possible environment for a fragile 34-year-old, and a squad place built on speculation is a squad place some younger player will never get. That is a real argument. Every word of it holds up. But every single piece of it rests on one assumption, that Neymar is being picked to start and carry Brazil on his back. And Ancelotti flat out told you that is not the plan. 1 minute, 5 minutes, a penalty. He is not betting on Neymar the workhorse, he is betting on Neymar the moment. 30 minutes off the bench in a knockout game that has gone flat. 1 pass nobody else on the field even sees. 1 free kick curled into a pocket of space the defense stopped guarding an hour ago. 1 penalty in a shootout taken by a man who has already stood on that exact spot at a World Cup. You know the moment. Ball glued to his left foot. 3 defenders crowding him in a phone booth of space, and somehow the ball just comes out the other side. That kind of vision is the very last thing to leave a player, long after the knees have started to betray him. Tournament football turns on flashes like that in ways a domestic goal column will never, ever measure. And the man placing this bet has won more knockout football than any human being alive. This is the one scenario he has more reps in than anybody on the planet. He is not guessing here. So, was he right? Look at it this way. Ronaldo, the roaring crowds in Rio, the half of Brazil that voted yes. On its own, all of that belief counted for absolutely nothing. What made it matter is that the most demanding judge available, with no obligation, no history, and 3 documented rejections on the record, ran his own investigation and landed in exactly the same place. That is what the meme cycle completely missed. The just retire crowd slammed the case shut, and while they were all looking the other way, Neymar quietly answered the only question that was ever really on the table. And there is one more thing. It is the reason any of this matters beyond a name on a list. Neymar has been to 3 World Cups. He has never won one. He has never even finished one cleanly. Home soil, 2014. Brazil's golden boy at 22. The quarterfinal against Colombia. Juan Zuniga drives a knee into his back and fractures a vertebra. He watches the 7-1 against Germany from his own sofa. At home, Russia, 2018. Rushed back from a foot injury, he should have had far more time to heal. And the tournament curdles into a meme. The rolling, the theatrics, Brazil dumped out in the quarters, then Qatar. He hurts his ankle in the very first game. He fights all the way back. He scores a gorgeous extra time goal against Croatia in the quarterfinal. Then Croatia claw it back 3 minutes from the end, penalty, shootout. He was lined up to take the 5th kick. The shootout ended before his turn ever came. He sank down onto the halfway line and cried. 3 tournaments, 3 completely different ways to walk away with nothing at all. A broken back, a meme campaign, and a penalty he never even got to take. That is his entire World Cup story. 2026 is the final page. At 34, there is no realistic version of Neymar at the 2030 World Cup. This is it, the last chapter. And against everything the last 2.5 years screamed about his body and his form, he gets one more walkout, one more anthem. One more shot at writing a different ending onto the most frustrating great career of his generation. So when he finally steps onto that pitch, watch it properly. Not for the meme. Not while you wait for him to go down clutching something. Watch it knowing exactly what it cost him just to be standing there at all. Knowing that the most ruthless mind in the sport looked at the wreckage of the last 3 years and still said yes. So here is the question, and be honest down in the comments. When you heard Neymar had made the squad, what was your actual, gut-level first reaction? Did you roll your eyes, or did some part of you, the part that watched him at 19 at Santos, the part that lived through the Barcelona years, quietly want him to make it? Be honest. The answer says more than you think. And if this gave you a different way of seeing the pick than the one you walked in with, go ahead and subscribe. Half of football wrote the obituary. The hardest judge in the game refused to sign it. One of them is going to end up right. See you in the next one.